Hello, comic fans. This is episode 3 of Past.Present.Future. I'm Griffin, your host, and thanks for hanging out. PPFCWL is a comics recommendation discussion podcast where I sit down with a guest and we talk about our favorite books, past, present, and future. We get to share what we love with each other and you at home. My guest this episode is one of the founders of Honestly Nerds and my former co-host, Chris Nolan. Chris, thanks for joining me, bud.
Griff, thanks for having me on, man. As you know, best things come in threes, so I don't think it's by chance that this is the third episode. So.
Excellent. How you been? How's things going?
Things are great, man. Just trying to keep up with as many comic books as possible while doing the whole family thing. We just bought a house, so my wife and
so excited.
And my son and I are loving it. So life's great right now, though. Lots of good comics out there right now.
Lots of good comics, and I'm excited to talk about our selections today. But first, I kind of wanted to hear a little bit about your origin story. What got you into comics?
So it really started out, I'd say like X-Men and Spider-Man. They really kind of started me out. But if I'm really diving back in to my childhood, I gotta say, man, it's James O'Barr's The Crow. I remember seeing The Crow in the theater and just being blown away by it and wanting to just devour everything associated with it. So when I found out that there was a comic book that it was based off of, I lost my mind, and I made my dad take me to Steve's Comic Relief, and I got the big graphic novel that they had, and I loved that series. I love that book. The movie's phenomenal, but that comic book just resonated with me at a time in my childhood when I needed it. James O'Barr pulled inspiration from his own tragedy that hit his life, where his fiance was killed by a drunk driver, and he's a self-taught artist, and all of that, the artwork, it's raw and it's visceral, but it's so powerful and beautiful that I fell in love with it. And then, contrast that with my love for Spider-Man and X-Men, and then that's really probably the catalyst for me.
That actually explains a lot about your tastes. Like we're real life friends, so I talk to you about comics a lot and recommend you things, and you recommend me things. You actually got me to give Donny Cates' Venom a chance, which I am very grateful for. You were the straw that broke the camel's back on that, of people telling me to give it a shot. Awesome series. I've never read The Crow, so it's super cool to hear you talk about it, and you've been encouraging me to read it, so I'm going to officially commit to checking that out.
I lost my the original graphic novel that I had as a kid, just
it happens,
and stuff. So, but then I actually acquired another copy of it, but it's in my office at work, and I'm still working remotely. So as soon as I get back in the office, I'm going to grab it out of there, and it's going to come right to you. So
I'm really excited about that. Let's get into the past, present, future picks. What's your past pick?
All of the praise that you just gave me is very humbling, because on the flip side of that, anytime you recommend something to me, Griffin, I dive right into it. You got me into Boom, you got me back into Image, and you really shed light on the amazing creator, Jeff Lemire.
Lemire's the GOAT.
My first experience with him was Sweet Tooth, and I remember really enjoying the show, but not really loving the comic as much as I know a lot of people do. But that didn't stop me from him, because anytime I'm going through Image or Boom, there's like 6 or 7 ads for a new Jeff Lemire series. So the guy never stops working. Yeah. But his comic Descender, it hooked me right away, man. It was written by Jeff Lemire and illustrated by Dustin Nguyen back in March of 2015, and it was published by Image Comics. The series ran for about 32 issues, or 6 volumes in trade paperback. And like I was just saying, even though Lemire's writing is critically acclaimed and the guy never misses, Dustin's paints, the artwork, the style,
the watercolor style is so cool.
It's so precise and beautiful. I have never seen, like, I went through my Alex Ross stage and stuff like that, but I've never been a big fan of paints with comics. Like I'm a traditionalist. Like I love seeing like just drawn pictures, you know. So like I can respect the paint style that a lot of artists have. I totally respect it, but it never caught me until I saw Wins. It's gorgeous. It's breathtaking. I found myself caring more about the art than the story, because the story of Descender, it's the hero's journey, you know, but it's the art style that Win has. It just hooked me right away. There's full panel splash pages of just robots destroying entire cities, and the use of reds and blacks, and so many other colors. It's gorgeous, and I fell in love with it. Lemire wrote this when he was becoming a dad, and I can definitely see that having the impact that it had on me as being a relatively new dad at the time that I was reading this. It's like AI meets Star Wars with Dash Lord of the Rings. The main character is this cyborg kid named Tim. He's like a companion robot, and he just gets stuck in the middle of this war between humans and robots. And there's these giant celestial like god robot creatures that just destroy a good chunk of the human civilization. I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but it's a fun series. You're following around these fun characters. Tim meets the coolest characters. There's one other robot in the series named Driller, and Driller is a killer. And he's like this mining robot, and he's like this big hulking brute of a robot, and he's got two big drillers on his hands, and like they flesh him out, and you care about him. Like they do such a good job of showing the class struggle between the humans and the robots, you know. And the robots are
class struggle,
you know, like the humans are the elites, and the robots are their subservience. And you really feel for the pain and the bigotry that the robots go through from the humans, who just look at them as tools. They don't see them as living things. If you guys haven't read it before, I highly recommend it. It's probably one of my favorite Lemire stories. Each of the cover art, each page is just like a work of art. They tell so much without giving too much away, you know. And I can't say enough good things about this series. There's a sequel series to it called
Ascender. Yeah,
it was okay. It was good.
Interesting. It
didn't hit me the same way Descender did, so I definitely prefer Descender over Ascender.
Hot take.
Yeah, I feel like Ascender could have gone on a little bit longer. I felt like they kind of ended it too soon. It was a joy to read. I know I'm loving something when I'm devouring it. When I'm like, oh, that's 6 trade paperbacks. That'll take me a hot minute. And like a couple days later, I'm like at the end, and I'm like dreading getting to the end of it because I don't want it to be over.
Lemire is such an interesting writer too, because he takes on so many different styles while kind of retaining a lot of the same themes.
Yeah.
Something like the post-apocalyptic Sweet Tooth versus Descender versus something like Gravity Falls, which is a complicated horror with time travel.
Yeah,
and
right.
Something like May's book that he's writing now versus something like Primordial, which he's writing now. Like I'm always awed by Lemire's ability to seemingly congruently jump genres so effectively.
He's a master at that. I even started reading Essex County, and Essex County
I've heard good things.
It's phenomenal, but it's nothing like Descender. It's nothing like Sweet Tooth. It's nothing like, Gravity Falls. It's very grounded in reality. You're following these people in their day-to-day lives, and it's fascinating. I still have a lot more to read on it, but what I read, I loved. And Lemire is up there with Tinian, with Snyder, with Hickman, in terms of some of my favorite creators right now. So
the other thing that I really admire about Lemire is he picks out such great co-collaborators.
Oh yeah.
I'll pick up anything he does with Sorrentino, and I'll pick up anything he does with Nguyen. But even those artist styles will change slightly depending on the way that Lemire's approaching that project. I just really appreciate that.
Like Nguyen's art style, like I did not
Nguyen's
know.
So good.
you could reach the level of precision that he like with painting. I never thought watercolors could produce something again that precise.
Nguyen and Lemire just released a Robin and Batman book. It's
Okay.
like a mini series.
Nice.
I hear is very good. So I got to go back and pick that up because I skipped it this time around.
Drop that one on the list.
My past pick is a different take on the future. The Private Eye was released by Panel Syndicate in 2013 from writer Brian K. Vaughan, artist Marcos Martin, and colorist Monza Vincente. It's impossible to discuss what I like about The Private Eye, a story about privacy and its relationship to the internet, without also discussing Panel Syndicate. Panel Syndicate is the brainchild of Martin, Vaughan, and Vincente, a DRM-free, online-only publisher with a pay-what-you-want model dedicated from inception to making comics easily available and affordable while guaranteeing 100% of the money to the creators.
Nice.
It was entirely new ground in 2013 for high-profile creators to launch a platform for their own distribution. The digital market was largely unproven, and the fact that they did so to tell a dystopian detective story framed by societal fallout from the cloudburst, a massive privacy breach that leads to the destruction of the internet, has always been thematically interesting to me. It's an extra layer to the incredibly color-rich tapestry Vincente and Martin bring to life. Courtesy of Vincente's palette, the pages of The Private Eye show a vibrant and highly saturated future full of masks and costumes. Aliases or NIMS have become IRL shields of anonymity, adopted on adulthood. Martin's wild and varied designs bring to life an atypical dystopia, hyper-focused on privacy. A future where journalists, the Fourth Estate, are the new police force, and paparazzi are the new private investigators, operating illegally to breach that most sanctified right. Vaughn's vision has sci-fi tech like mag cars and dream coats that have optic camo, but without the connectivity and communication we usually see coincide, which leads to things like social media groups or message boards becoming IRL parlors, throwbacks to Renaissance meetups where dangerous ideas are discussed, mask to mask in abandoned areas. This is a neat twist on neo-noir, and P.I., our main character, is a very cool take on the archetypical detective. As mentioned, the combined lines and color from Martin and Vincente are a treat to behold. It's not my absolute favorite writing from Brian K. Vaughan, but any fan of his will find a lot to enjoy between the snappy dialogue and a lived-in feeling world. There's a fun, if not entirely memorable cast of support characters that fill their various roles well enough. Grandpa is my favorite, and the way Vaughan uses him to poke fun at the youth of yesterday doesn't come off as heavy-handed or insulting. This is 10 issues totaled, collected years after its release in a single hardcover with very unique wide sizing, and is worth checking out for anyone looking for a short romp through an unusual but well-realized and timely future.
You sold me, man. I think that's really, I think it's really the concept of the internet being blown away, and then you're left with this world where people are doing shady stuff and wearing masks. I mean, and
they're wearing their masks through their entire existence of daily life. It becomes their actual upon adulthood, you like pick a NIM and that becomes your new persona. And like that's you wear the mask out. There's a part of the book where someone hires PI or a private detective to look for an old flame from like high school. They have to hire them because it's impossible to find that person anymore because they have an entire new identity. And it's just little things like that. It's such an interesting look at the fallout from our oversharing social media driven existences where more and more our entire person can be found in our search histories and things like that.
I mean, I grew up as a child of the 80s and the 90s, so I clearly remember a time when there was no internet.
Pretty weird, right?
It's very weird. But now, in my 40s, I can't imagine life without the internet. So this sounds like a really cool book, and I'm also a fan of Brian K. Vaughan. Is it on Comixology or?
I have no idea. It's on Panel Syndicate, which still exists. It's a website you can go to right now. You can get them for free. It's completely pay what you want.
That's dope.
And always has been. Yeah, it's built into their model. So like you can get the whole trade collection for whatever you want to pay them. And you download it and you have it on your computer. You can move it to a tablet. And they have a bunch of other books up there, and books still come out on that publisher. Creators like Ed Brubaker and other big names have books that are only available on that. So everyone should check it out for sure.
I love and respect the physical aspect of comics, but I'm a sucker for the digital stuff, man.
I know you are. I'm still like grounded really hard in my physical copy. I have that wide frame hardcover. I wish I had unpacked it from a box to show off.
I have the most undying respect for you for doing that.
I mean, it's a mistake. Look at how many boxes are behind me. It's untenable.
No, but still, like, to be able to have that physical copy. There's some comics, like I bought Descender's first trade paperback just because I wanted it. Like the cover issue for that is like Tim. Look, it's like all black panel with like skies, like stars in the background, and Tim's
yeah,
like,
I know that issue. That's a great issue.
I love that. So I just wanted that to have the physical copy so I can look at it. But yeah, I'm a sucker for
it. Some issues are too good. Some things you need the physical for sure. And I just the feel of turning the pages and holding it, and then conversely being able to hand it to someone else.
That's what I'm looking at too. Like there's some, like I managed to find, I lost a good chunk of all my comics that I collected as a kid.
That's
but
rough.
my dad actually gave me like this briefcase that was filled with like all of the signed ones. Like I have X-Men Unlimited #1 signed by Scott Lobdell and Chris Bocciolo and like a couple other really goodies. But yeah, like the physicalness, I want to be able to just kind of leave that there when my son gets older, and if he wants to pick it up, you know, if he wants to pick up that copy of Descender and start diving into it, I think that's a cool way to pass the torch on. Everything's going to be digital and you're going to be consuming it, but it has something physical like that. I can see how it can definitely be a lot more special.
Yeah, I think it does. It has a more special quality, at least for me. I know there's a lot of reasons to go digital, especially with this impending printing shortage. Yeah. We might all be reading digital soon, but I can focus more. I get drawn deeper into it when I'm flipping those pages.
No, definitely. It's the whole reason why I got an iPad. I got so tired of reading comics on my phone.
I bought a Kindle, and for the exact same reason, a bunch of years back actually. But I had a smaller, less, like I didn't have room to store any physicals, so I was like, I need something.
Yeah.
Let's move into our current books. What do you want to highlight today?
This was tough, man, because there's a handful of incredible books that
there's so many.
Right
I have such a hard time narrowing it down. I was telling you, I like made 2 or 3 other picks for this episode, and then I had to redo the whole thing a couple of times.
I mean, I struggled. Like I knew I wanted to go with Descender for my first pick. My future pick kind of changed, but this one was like tough because, again, like, yeah, there's so much good stuff out there. Like I love what Hickman's doing with X-Men, or like what he's done with X-Men. There's a lot of other good Marvel titles right now. There's some really solid DC stuff. And speaking of which, there's a lot of solid stuff on DC Black Label.
Yes.
Handful of amazing stuff. But the one that popped out on me, the one that I find myself like forcing myself to just carve out 20 minutes to read, whereas all my other comics, I'll kind of get to them over the coming weeks. Like on Wednesdays when this drops, I'm devouring it. It's James Tinian's The Nice House on the Lake.
Great book.
It's published again by DC Black Label. The first issue released in June of this year, over the summer. There's about 5 issues right now. The artwork is by Olivero Martinez Bueno, with colors by Jordi Belair. And I had no idea what this series was about, and I still have no idea what this series is about. And I fucking love it, man. It's such a good thing. Tinian, I don't know how he does it. Just pumps out Department of Truth, freaking Something is Killing the Children, House of Slaughter, like
just
all the
hits,
all the Batman stuff that he's doing. And this series is fantastic. It has like the whole apocalyptic end of the world thing going on, mixed with those like the big chill you know, like a bunch of friends getting together up the cabin in the
Yeah.
woods to just reconnect because it's been so long. And you know, as we get older, that tight knit group of friends that you had in your 20s that you swore you were always going to be friends with until the day you die, you know, life happens. People get older, people get in relationships, people get married, they have kids. That tight group starts to sort of come apart, and that's not a bad thing,
It's part of
but
life.
it's part of life. And before you know it, you know, it's been a couple months before you've seen some of your friends. So this series just nails that, while at the same time having this whole apocalyptic event occur that you know nothing about. I don't want to say too much.
Understand?
Because
Yeah,
I
a
don't
lot of
want to
that book is
spoil.
based in the mystery and the.
It really is. It's you get new little pieces of information with each issue as it goes on. And again, it's only 5 issues so far. They're taking a little break right now, which is god awfully painful. But I love the series so much. I love the characters. The main friend who is kind of responsible for bringing everybody back together. His name's Walter. Walter is he's a character. I love how each issue starts with one of the friends in, I guess, sort of like the near future. So you're seeing what these people in a different place physically, like they look different. They look like they've been through hell and like a war and like surviving like impossible odds. And then it transitions to what you could consider the present, where these group of friends get stuck at this cabin that their friend Walter invites them to, and they can't leave. Meanwhile, they find out that the entire world outside of where they're at is coming to an end. It's so good. And then to complement that is the artwork. Bueno's artwork is gorgeous. There's parts where it has like this real like otherworldly, creepy aspect to it, and then it has this warm, comforting, I'm hanging out with my friends vibe to it. And I can't say enough good things about this series. I have a feeling. I mean, I don't think it's going to go on forever. I think that there's an end point here, but I hope it's not for a while. The part of me is like, just let it build up, because those issues fly by so fast, man. When you're reading them, I'm like, how was that 22 pages? That was not 22 pages. That was like 18 pages with some bullshit fucking ads. But again, Tinian does a stellar job introducing this huge ensemble cast through the eyes of each of the friends. You get to know each of the friends. You get to understand what their flaws are. You get to understand what their strengths are. And you're just as clueless as they are as to what's going on here. And you can tell that these people are being forced to grow, you know, not only with just getting older and going through the changes that we go through with our friends and our family, but to grow in order to survive is what I'm thinking is coming too.
I like that. I like that a lot.
This is a really good series, and I have yet to read anything by Tinian that I don't like. So that he's, like I was saying earlier, he's up there with Snyder, Hickman, Lemire, in terms of my favorite creators right now.
He's definitely a rising star, and I definitely see why. This book does a really cool thing that you were kind of talking about, where Tinian makes the choice to have each character have an issue, and that issue is completely from their perspective. And it really you get to learn about all of the other characters, but you get to learn about the character telling the story from that issue too, because of how they view all of the other characters. And you get to you get a really intimate understanding of each person because of that, and the dynamics of the group over time. And if you didn't have that kind of a narrative style, you wouldn't have that kind of closeness with the group. You understand this group. Yeah. And I think that that's like a super cool choice.
And like the struggles with Walter, you know, and all of that goes into the way that he fleshes out these characters, and he makes you feel like I feel like these are these are people that I know. You know, like I can pinpoint different friends that I've had throughout my life
100%.
that each one of these characters remind me of. You know, even Walter. I've had friends that distinctly remind me of Walter, not to the level that Walter goes, but you know, like it's so well done, and I get super jealous when I'm reading that, and I'm like, Tinian, how do you do this? How? Like, I wish I was even on the level of the type of writer that he is, and
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people probably do.
Right. I can't wait to see where this goes. The little nuggets of information that you get, and the little secrets that are just dropped, and like symbols and different buildings that you end up seeing. Like I love when shows do this. I love when series do this. The world building, yeah.
The little things, the symbols and stuff that you start seeing in bigger ways. He's so good at that. And it's interesting. Earlier, the creators you compared him to were people like Hickman, and it's such a good comparison because of that slow burn style. Yeah. Tinian likes to take his time telling his creator-owned stories most of the time, and he lets the things breathe, and that, like,
no, he totally does.
I think some people get turned off because they feel like not enough's happening fast enough. Yeah. But I appreciate the payoff, and I think that there's almost always been a payoff.
I love slow burn and storytelling. I might get frustrated, but that's because I'm a glutton and I want it all right now. Fair. You know,
I want it now.
I need somebody like Tinian to be like, no, slap my hand. You don't need all this right now. You're going to thank me in the end because you're going to go on this journey with me. And I love that. And I love how, like, him and Hickman specifically, they break sort of the norms of what comics are. You know, like there's parts in this where like 2 pages are like, it's like you're looking at somebody's journal, you know, or you're seeing a bunch of collected tweets on a page. So it's not like a traditional comic book panel where it's like panel, dialogue, characters. It's helping him build the world, but because you're seeing stuff that the characters are seeing. Like diary entries, you know, you're seeing like a collage of different photos with like stuff written on them. Again, the tweets, the panel of tweets that you see at the end of the first page, like fucking
don't spoil that, but that was awesome.
I won't, but that's all I'll say is the panel of tweets.
We don't even have a spoiler rule on the show. I just think when I read that first issue, I was like, I can't tell anyone anything about this, but I need everyone to read this immediately. I was like, hey, all I can tell you is that it's really cool and you should read this first issue.
I remember like one of the first things that like I talked to you about with this series, we talked about tweets, the tweet page. I was just like, oh my God.
I was, oh, so cool. And then the other comparison there is that those kind of info pages compare to Hickman's info pages where he likes to break kind of the rules of comic paneling and give these pages, and it's just kind of a different take on that. I like Tinian's kind of world building through that too.
I love that too, because it's like, I don't know, like shows like Lost and Game of Thrones that have this huge history, the mythology. I always liked when they took like a little like detour, you know, like the stuff with Lost, like I devoured, like what is everything that's written on the wall, you know, like down in the bunker, or like with Game of Thrones, like what's what do these markings mean, you know, like I always dive into
you love the theories too.
Yeah
it's stuff to chew on, it's angles to think about, it's new information, trying to figure out where puzzle pieces go. It's a very appealing storytelling mechanic.
It's great, man. It keeps you hungry for more, and it just makes everything seem bigger and more expansive and just more rich. I love that. This wait, what did they say, like a couple months? They were taking a break after. Jesus, man,
especially with where that issue ended. It's like,
I know,
like I finally have like hooks and like where a plot might continue, and it like suddenly I understand the scope of what we're talking about, and they're like, and we'll get to it. I want to highlight What's the Furthest Place From Here, a comic by creative team Matthew Rosenberg and Tyler Boss that just came out from Image. Return viewers may remember that What's the Furthest Place From Here was my future pick in episode 1. I was very excited about Rosenberg and Boss's post-apocalyptic coming-of-age story. I like their previous team-ups. 4 kids walk into a bank and we can never go home are both solid, and this promised to retread some of those themes while more directly incorporating music and punk rock aesthetic. I mean, it takes its name from a Jawbreakers song. The promo art looked intriguing. I'm here so soon talking about a book that's only 1 issue deep for 2 reasons. The first is that it fucking rules. There's so much to love about What's the Furthest Place From Here that I struggled figuring out where to start. It's an almost perfect cross-section of my interest and elements I'm drawn to. There's an expertly characterized cast of misfits. It has punk rock authenticity from Easter eggs to influence. It's reminiscent of 80s coming-of-age stories and outsider cinema. There's gang violence, big ideas, and attention to detail. The places it pulls from and the things it does with those elements is instantly engaging, but at no point does it feel derivative. It's not drowning in references or gatekeeping with its counterculture love. Instead, it assembles itself in a way to be greater than the sum of its parts. A triple-sized issue that takes its time on character moments, but doesn't lack action. The world building is subtle but incredibly effective. Clearly a cooperative, creative endeavor in the best way. Rosenberg uses dialogue incredibly well, avoiding longer, detailed exposition dumps in favor of small but important character beats that reveal bits and pieces of much larger goings-on to come. Boss's combination of thick outlines and small details always impresses me, and the record room and title pages are perfect examples that show off his talents, but the deliberate pacing of the panels and some of the action sequences and the way that multiple simultaneous events are cut together for thematic and emotional effect is next level. Cinematic, but in a way that only a comic can properly achieve. A quick synopsis, society is over, and kids have themed gangs in a world without adults. Think Warriors meets Sweet Tooth. When kids grow old, they're sent away to the mysterious wasteland never to be heard from again. These gangs are found family, and our protagonist gang is called the Academy. They occupy a record store, and that ties directly into their culture. Records are chosen that represent each youth. Our main character, Sid, is pregnant, and she thinks she's found meaning in Hall & Oates. Her gruff friend Pruff points her towards SSD control instead. And it's in this way that music and counterculture is centered thematically. And then things happen. It's only 1 issue, so I don't want to get too deep into the who's and the what's. But I cannot wait for more. Which brings me to the second reason I'm talking about a book I just previewed that's only had 1 issue. I want you to get on this train. It's a good fucking train. Unfortunately, it may only leave the station once. There's a serious printer and paper shortage, which may make a second print run impossible. Matthew Rosenberg detailed this in a Twitter thread recently, but the short of it is that the comic industry is a very specific microcosm that very much relies on multiple print runs, especially in the indie comic realm. If this book sounds like it might be up your alley, you need to hit up your local comic store and pre-order it. Final cutoff for issue 2 will have just passed by the time this comes out, but issue 3's cutoff is December 13th. So get your orders in and hop on board because it's going to be a hell of a ride.
Sounds fantastic, man. And yeah, I heard you describe this book to Soapbox J, and I believe you said it's dripping with punk rock. I love that description. And then when we were talking before the show, when you said it's, and you kind of touched on it here, it's like Warriors meets Suburbia meets, what was the?
Sweet Tooth. So you get the post-apocalyptic kind of journey from Sweet Tooth mixed with the counterculture of Suburbia and the world politics of the Warriors.
I thought I was like the only person that remembered that movie, Suburbia.
It's a great movie.
And
like so many other great 80s like coming of age stories you can kind of feel little bits of, but it's just assembled so perfectly for what it's trying to do. And you talk about making choices that work for the book you're trying to make, and I think this makes all of the right choices for the book they're trying to make.
Being able to like factor music into something like this too, I think that's amazing. As much of a comic fan as I am too, I love music.
I'm glad you said that because my future book is a different but equally exciting post-apocalyptic story set in a world that's specifically about music. Nice. So and then I just realized that all of my all of my books are either post-apocalyptic or dystopian futures, which is fun. I didn't mean to be thematic with my picks this week.
Hey man, it just happens. You love what you love. The heart wants what the heart wants.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
But that's so cool that there's a sort of marriage between, comics and storytelling and music like this. To have the characters pick out the record, that's so cool. You hooked me right there. As soon as you were like,
I think that you specifically will really dig
cool.
this for a bunch of reasons. I know that you're a sucker for like the soon to be parent thing, and then having a main protagonist that's a pregnant youth in a world without adults is already like off to a super interesting angle.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's a lot to love about this, and I really do. I hope people go check it out and check it out from a comic store, because Rosenberg really pushes this as a thing he wanted to put in it's a comic for comic stores. They did a special edition that has a 7-inch record with like exclusive songs from cool bands. That was like a comic store only exclusive thing.
Yeah,
to try to like drive people in. And any creator that supports comic stores the way that Rosenberg does, I want to support. But I love the way that he writes snappy dialogue. I don't know if you've ever read We Can Never Go Home. It's another book where you can definitely feel the influences from his own experiences being in like subcultures.
Okay.
Specifically, I think punk.
Nice.
And then you'll really appreciate in the art. Tyler Boss does all these little like there's graffiti on the walls, and it's all like authentic graffiti you'd see at like a punk venue and stuff, like little touches like that. There's the punk rock and comics is the same thing. Like the discovery aspect is the same. It's a very tight-knit industry, especially in DIY music. Everyone kind of knows everyone, and I feel like that's the same with like indie comics. I feel like there's that same kind of, maybe not close-knit, but familiarity, and it breeds a certain kind of community. And I think that those two things are basically the same thing, and it's super cool to see that represented on the page by other people who I know understand that. And that's what I think I loved about this the most.
I love that the similarities that you just laid out between indie rock, punk rock, and indie comics and stuff, because I definitely agree that they're there, and it's cool.
Let's move into the future. Let's gaze to the north. The book that you are going to tell us about, I don't know anything about, which happens not so often. So I'm super excited to find out what book has caught your eye.
So I took a break, I think, from comics when I was like late 20s, in the 30s. I wasn't near any good comic shops and stuff, and like life got to me, and I remember it been a while since I had read any comics. I got hooked on Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead, and I didn't see it coming. And before I knew it, just like everything else that I fall in love with that I'm reading, I'm devouring these books. So this is well after the TV series came out. There are these series of video games created by former game studio Telltale. And they were very well known for doing an adaptation of Fables.
Kind of adventure games, right?
It's like choose your own adventure sort of thing. They did like a Back to the Future game and stuff, but they really hit the mark and became well known when they adapted the Walking Dead comics to be a video game series. And like you were just saying, it's choose your own adventure. You're in the first season of this game. There were 4 seasons total. First season, you're playing this main character, Lee. He's a convicted murderer who's on his way to go to jail, and the zombie apocalypse happens, and he gets thrown in the middle of it. In the process of getting thrown in the middle of it, he becomes responsible for this little girl that he saves named Clementine. And I don't want to spoil anything for anyone that hasn't read it, but Clementine becomes the main character in the series. And I love Clementine. And Clementine's getting her own comic book series.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's published by Skybound under Skybound's new young adult line called Skybound Comic. It's set to drop June 22nd, so this upcoming summer. And it's going to be a trilogy. So it's going to be book 1 through 3. and it's being written and drawn by Tilly Walden, who people might know her from her books, The End of Summer. I love this part, City Inside, just to name a couple. But it looks like it's going to be it's all black and white, which is fine.
Classic Walking Dead.
Yeah, and it's picking up with Clementine after the end of the last season of the video games. So I can't wait. Like I love Clementine. I have my son, and I know what it's like to be a parent now. But there was a time when it was just me. It was just me living my life, and I think this is, I don't know, playing these games. Clementine's welfare, her well-being. You're responsible for that. You're responsible for making the choices for her as Lee in the first game to protect her, and then you're responsible as the series goes on, and you're playing her as the main character, and you have to make these decisions. Is she going to be brutal because the zombie apocalypse demands that you're brutal? Is she going to lose her humanity? Like I want to do everything I can to keep Clementine safe because I fucking love Clementine. Like I love this little girl. Like it's my responsibility to make sure that she lives through this zombie apocalypse and nothing bad happens to her. And so much bad shit happens to her. And,
I love how seriously you take this responsibility.
Because it's how I remember when I was playing it. Like I remember being so fucking conflicted with the choices I had to make in this. Do I kill this person? They just stole from us. But like, do I really want to kill them? Like, but they got bit. How do we know? You know, like it's like things like that. Just like when you're reading the books and you're watching the show. The way that Telltale captured that and made it into this whole choose your own adventure, I ate that shit up and I fucking loved it. Unfortunately, Telltale went out of business.
They sure did.
So they really never had a chance to finish the video game series. Thankfully, the last season got picked up by Skybound, actually, and their video game branch of that company was able to finish it. It wasn't perfect, you know, but they always did find nice ways of sort of dropping in aspects from the main Walking Dead comic series into this, because Clementine is existing while Rick and Michonne and Andrea and everybody else are doing their thing. You know, Clementine she's not that far away. So she does run into some of the characters. You know, when you first meet Clementine, she's a child. Now she's a young woman, and as a young woman, she has responsibilities, and she's changed and she's grown. And I am so excited to see what my Clementine has been up to. We got a nice little tease. Skybound was doing this thing where it was like kind of like a collection of previews,
an anthology preview thing going. Yeah, like, I remember that.
Skybound X, I think it was called. They did some weird, crazy twist with Walking Dead where it gets super bonkers off the walls. But they did a little preview for this, and you know what? I kind of described the art style. It did kind of remind me of Lemire's drawing style with like something like Sweet Tooth.
Okay, know? I like his style.
It's again, it's black and white. It's not like flashy and like. But it feels like something Clementine would be a part of. And I'm really pumped.
I wonder how they'll transition from like having the person interacting with Clementine being so controlled in the narrative to like a passive medium. I'll have to check back in with you and see how you like the reading about Clementine versus interacting with Clementine.
It's definitely like I'm kind of just watching instead of being. But you know, that's what ends up happening as a parent. You know, like you
tied it together, involved. Chris.
No way, I brought that home. you're deeply involved with your child. You know, when they're first born, and then through like them being children, and then you know they start to let them go as they become adolescents, and then they become adults, and they don't need you anymore. You know, like, and that's. Clementine doesn't need me anymore, and it's okay because I know that she is ready for the world out there.
That sounds really cool. I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about that. The book I'm most excited about actually comes out next week, nice. November 17th, from Vault Comics, and it's called Radio Apocalypse. Radio Apocalypse is the latest collaboration from one of my all-time favorite team of collaborators. Ram V, Anand RK, and Aditya Bendikar are a trifecta that just vibes. Gravity's Wall was my introduction to them, and it's a book I revisit often, a piece about Mumbai subculture and coming of age. Blue and Green was next, showing off an entirely different style visually while balancing jazz and horror. Radio Apocalypse seems to be a combination. This is a coming-of-age story about the last radio station at the end of the world. Fitting to preview this in the same episode as What's the Furthest Place From Here? Comics and music share so much in my mind, like we were just talking about. And these stories seem molded by so many of the things that I love. So what has me especially excited for this? It could be that Ram V wrote my favorite series of the year already in The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, or the care and thought that Bidikar puts into their lettering every time, or the incredible preview pages that showcase Anand RK's unique style. And it is all of these. But I think that what sold me the most, even more than the premise or the people involved, was the instructions Ram released for reading Radio Apocalypse. Dear reader, this comic was written to music playing over speakers, sometimes on vinyl, others remembered on CDs and audio cassette. The story was told with tunes and words and images twining into this inseparable thing in front of you. Let's make a deal. I'll tell you the best story I can about lives, loves, loss, and joy. And you, when you find an image or a line referencing a song or a character playing music on their boombox, Walkman, or handheld radio, I want you to find that song wherever you listen to music, and I want you to play it. That's how this story of the last radio station standing silhouetted at the far horizon is meant to be read. Plugged in and turned up. So come, let me play you a song. How can you not want to read that?
Yo, that's so fucking awesome.
How can you not want to read that?
That reminds me, like, we were just listening to Scott Snyder's writing class, and he had Donnie Cates on, and Donnie Cates was talking about when he was writing Venom, like, the music that he was listening to. That's so cool that artists, that writers do that. And wow, that's so cool.
It sounds like, and like, to know that there's that intent that I'm supposed to be hearing this and it's included in the page, but to go beyond that normal comics understanding of the visual as a sound or sound effect, to actually, you know, put headphones on and listen to something that as it's happening on the page, it's just a different way of immersing yourself in a book that really excites me.
It reminds me of, like, it's like Fallout. Like, the music in Fallout is kind of like its own character, you know?
Totally.
Like the video game. And there's a radio station that's the last radio station, you know, after an apocalypse. And you have
there's a fun mission with that too. I remember that.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to set the world on fire. Like all these old, like 50s songs and stuff. So, and Ram V's incredible.
Yeah,
he's another
one of my
one.
favorites.
Another one, Griffin. It's all your fault, Griffin.
Sorry. I'm not sorry at all, but like, I'm sorry.
Got me turned onto Ram V with the vampire series.
These Savage Shores.
Yeah. So Ram V, I would always see his name pop up on stuff, and I never took the time. And I can thank you for exposing me to him. So I will also be picking up Radio Apocalypse.
The fun thing about that, to just do another connection, Ram is taking over for Cates on Venom currently. Yep. So it's all intertwined.
It's all connected, man. We're like freaking Charlie on Always Sunny. It's like
So that's the episode. A parting thank you to all the people watching and talking about these books with us in the comments and messages. Make sure you support your local comic shops. Shout out to Comic Relief and Wade's Comic Madness for holding me down on New Comic Book Day. Support the books and creators you love. Thanks to Ray Beats for his intro music. Check out his songs, available on all streaming platforms. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications on new episodes. You can always keep up with me on Twitter at Griffin Talks, where I'm usually posting quick impressions and reviews on weeklies and trades as I get to them. Chris, is there anything you want to plug?
Nothing right now. I hope to have some stuff coming out, you know, once we get into 2022. I'm over in the Nerd Gang group over on Facebook. I'm always on Twitter too. Chris Nolan at Red Sky by Morning. and just
there's
having
also
fun.
a great little community blossoming on our Discord. Chris
Our Discord
is one of our collaborators on Name to Be Determined. I like
Discord
to
is
think of it as a community of collaborators, like a co-op where we all support each other and plug our projects. So make sure you come
cool.
down.
Yeah, come on down. We're actually doing Saga
That's
bi-weekly
right.
Saga reading groups to get us all ready for once the series picks back up in January. So we had our first initial group book reading discussion about it last week, and that was a blast. That was courtesy of my main man Griffin here pulling that all together, and we had a really good turnout.
I don't know what I'm doing. Come hang out.
Well, you clearly do know what you're doing.
There's a link to join in the description. Next episode, I am back with former Screen Rant and current / film writer Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie.
So we're really looking forward to that. Until next time.